Welcome back to Third Age Reforged, and this is a free-for-all, a 2v2v2v2. This is actually the first full lobby free-for-all that I've been able to do in quite a while, and it was actually quite unexpected. The lobby filled up faster than I thought. I was only going to do like a sort of very quick game, but in the end it turned out to be quite a long one, so I'm quite, well, at least long as far as free-for-alls go. This is it. While it does say 37,000 frames, there is a probably 7k frames gap where I'll have to make a cut, but even so, this is still quite long for a sort of mostly flat field standards. And Anorian is a map which is in the vein of most of the sort of standard sort of pitch battles, but in the middle you have this settlement, and it's really the only map that you could conduce as being a sort of king of the hill type map. Although most people will not go for the centre right away, as the battle wears on, it can be a good idea to try and hold the central ground so that you don't get ganged up on by three armies all at once right at the start. But even so, it does add some flavour to the map, which I do think a lot of the more open field battles do need more of. So we'll start off with the team that I am a part of, although we'll look at my allies' army first, and I am alongside Creed, who there's no real excuse for me not being able to win this map if I'm playing alongside Creed, seeing as he is the current champion on the Discord. But yes, he is playing as Eriador, not the most popular faction by most people's standards, but I actually do rather like them now. I've gained a new appreciation of them more recently, as I've said before, and he's got a front line of Foreshell heavy swords, sort of more standard human infantry, and just in behind them he's also got some battle-ready Dunedain, so that his infantry's got a little bit more muscle to it. That can be one of the complaints with Eriador. They don't really have a lot of solid, sort of, not a lot of units that can stand up well to attrition, but the battle-ready Dunedain are certainly that, because they do have hit points. And then back here we have some mounted battle-ready Dunedain. Very fast, they do have HP, but they are slightly worse than some of the more heavy knights. And he's got two of those, I believe, in flanking, or, well, alongside a unit of the Dunedain bodyguard, which again, as I've said before, is basically the same thing, only slightly better. He's also got some lumbermen, so some cheap shock troops, just in case we come up against any armoured units. Over here he's also got some Foreshell captains. Again, very similar to the Haven Guard, only not quite as good, but they will still get the job done. And over here, blending into the grass somewhat, we have the bandit javelins, and having javelins along is always a good idea. Potentially if you're up against Harad in a free-for-all, they're going to bring Rumour Kill most of the time, but there isn't any Harad players in this battle, so the javelins will be just for armour troops. He's also got the gatekeepers, of course. Can't see Eriador without their gatekeepers. And then back here, there are some hidden troops, as always. There's the Black Wolds hidden here, there's also some Dunedain Rangers, and some Thieves of Tharbad, I believe. Yes, there are. So he's got basically the hidden murder squad, which Eriador is known for in the current build. Then we have my army, and of course we were playing essentially with the tournament rules here, and there are certain aspects of this which show how flawed the current patch is, and how the tournament rules can be used to build ridiculous armies, and my army is probably one of those examples. I'm playing as Khand. My general is in a unit of Nurad Windblades. They're very quick, so I'm going to try and save them for towards the end, where they can do the most damage. And then we have the rest of my cavalry force, which is certainly not insubstantial. I've got two units of Wind Riders. These guys are light cavalry, but they are very fast, good for pinning a unit down, so that these guys, the Brotherhood of the Lance, can get a nice charge onto them. They are, of course, very, very deadly. A little bit vulnerable to missiles, perhaps. Then we have what is my infantry line. I've got two units of Candish Marauders, very cheap, but not terrible. I mean, if you can get them into a fight with armoured units, they'll do a decent job, provided they're backed up. I've also got a small amount of Variag Bowmen, and then I've got a front line of 4 Nurad footmen to give my army some form of infantry. But then over here I've got yet more cavalry, and yet more cavalry that has hit points as well. I had 5 units of cavalry that had hit points in this battle, and I've got one of each type of cataphract. I've got the Nerniag, I've got, in my opinion, the best looking of the 3, the Variags, and then over here I have the Nurad cataphract. So all of them very, very powerful, very slow, but honestly, when you charge them into enemies, they just don't go down. They're basically like medieval tanks. Very similar in many ways to the Dalian Earls, only I can bring... Technically, I could have brought 6 of them, but I didn't want to go too overboard. And then back here, I've got 2 units of Nerniag Horse Archers to give me some mobility. So that is my army. It's kind of silly. It's just a cav stack, with infantry basically being a token gesture. And unfortunately for this player, Zarko Jazarek, who's playing as Arnor, he's facing me down. Arnor can actually deal with a cav stack like this. They're probably one of the few that can, with their own cavalry, with their pikes, and with their archers, at least their Dunedain Troll Slayers. But his front line is Rangers. His Rangers will do a decent job against my infantry on the approach, or against my light cav, potentially. He's got one unit of Arnor Knights on the flank. Now, these guys don't stand a chance against the Cataphracts, so they do need to be careful. He's also got a full complement of Arnor pikemen, which he's going to need. He's going to need to get them front and centre very quickly so the front of his army isn't mown down like grass. And then he's got 1 unit of Knights of Numenor. I'm surprised, actually, he's one of the few Arnor players these days that haven't brought 2 of these guys, and they're going to be needed, honestly, against my army as they line up on the horizon. He's also got a full line of Arnor, or Arthur Dane men-at-arms, with, that's the Arnor Knights over there. He's got 2 units of dismounted Dunedain Knights, so these guys are a tough nut to crack, and he's got 1 unit of dismounted Arthur Dane Knights, so that's him. Let's have a look at his ally, who is Master Blaster, playing as Gondor. He's got a very wide line. He's got some Gondorian winged swordsmen. He's got some shielded fountain guard over here. He's also got some Gondorian infantrymen. Quite a few Gondorian infantrymen. Actually, while I'm thinking of this, I probably won't have the army comps on the screen in this case because there are 8 of them. And I foolishly didn't ask the players to save their army compositions for me. So, there you go. Unprofessional of me, I know. But then we also have some Gondor militia, a lot of Gondor militia actually. So he's obviously cut corners somewhere to afford some more expensive stuff. He's got several units of Axemen of Lasarnak as well. I know that he's got some Wardens of Minas Ithil hidden around here somewhere. He's also got some Wardens of the White Tower, I believe. Then over here he has Gondor Cavalry. They do have their armour upgrade, so they do look a little bit more fierce, like this, but they are certainly not the equivalent to something like the Gondor Knights. Now we shall move on to the third team, and we have, playing as Rohan, we have Steelcan, who has brought some Helm Hammers, obviously the anchor of the Rohan line, and my personal favourite Rohan infantry unit, the Marshals of the Red. In terms of stats, they're probably not quite as good as the Helm Hammers, but you can bring 2, and they aren't super expensive, and they very rarely don't pay for themselves. He's got a lot of Yorling swordsmen, just sort of trying to sort of give himself a little bit more of an infantry corps, so he hasn't spammed Cav in the same way that I have. I'm almost ashamed of myself, but we have some Helmingas. But his Cav force is certainly not anything to sneeze at. He's got a couple of units of mounted shield maidens. These guys can be just a ticket for turning the Cav force, well, the Cav fight in your favour, but he also has some Rohan bodyguards. Pretty quick, his general's in there. And he's also got 2 units of Rohan nobles. A criminal mistake in this sort of situation is not bringing the Kalanard on knights, because they are very, very expensive, but they are also extremely powerful. You know, they just will not die. They're like the Nurad Windblades, only with the tankiness to back that up. You know, you should always bring the Kalanard on knights, in my opinion. They might be expensive, but damn, are they worth it. And then his ally is Dwailing. He's got a lot of Dalian marksmen on the front line, so he's got a good skirmish force, which is going to be required to make up for Rohan's slightly less good skirmish force. He's also got several units of Lake Town pikes, so these guys were pretty good at warding off Cav, and if he uses them in tandem with the Rohan Cav force, he should be able to deal with any Cav buzzings that he may have, particularly seeing as my Cav will have taken losses by the time we get down here if we manage to get through Gondor and Arnor. And we also have Lake Town infantry, again just padding out the line, a couple of units of Dalian Earls. He's also got some Dale Swordmasters back here and some Royal Guard. Are there any Dalian Paladins around here? They're another expensive unit which are often worth it. Doesn't look like it. He's got 2 units of Dale Earls. These guys are, again, very solid, similar to my Cataphracts in many ways. And then he's got a couple of units of 8th Wodia Horse Guards just to pad out his Cav line. Now, the final team, we have Baconfish 302 playing as Lothlorien. He's got very fast-moving Galatharan mounted company. Again, he needs to be careful he doesn't get into a protracted engagement with Rohan's Cav force, because the Rohan nobles will eat these guys for breakfast, and the Earls will if they manage to get caught, but of course both of them are slower than the Galatharan. We also have some light elven archers, obviously Lothlorien with a very good skirmish force being elves. We have Sylvan heavy archers as well, and then just here on the end you can see the Sindar archers, and he also has the Galatharan veteran warriors at the back. He's got a full line of Sylvan spearmen, so padding out his infantry line nicely. He's also got a lot of Sylvan axemen for that AP, which is going to be very useful against the Dalian elites. And then his ally, Clueless, playing as the Orcs of the Misty Mountains. He's got 2 units of the Blackwatch Legion. Again, these guys very strong, very good at dealing with light pikes especially, so he'll be able to push his way through the Lake Town pikesmen. No problem with these guys. And he's also got some Mountain Uruk pikes of his own. He's got heavy Goblin crossbows, which offsets his allies' choice of long-range archers very nicely. He's also got some Orc bodyguards, and then over here a unit of Snow Trolls and Wargs. So he has got a nice anti-cavalry force indeed, and he's also got some Bulk champions. But as you can see, my ally is sort of going to join up with me pretty quickly, so it's likely to turn into a 2v2 on one side and a 2v2 on the other, and then it will turn into a bit of a mess, presumably in the middle, which is usually what happens. And as you can see, the first clash that is naturally going to happen as we get going here is going to be my army going up against Arnor, and of course I'm just going to charge forth and try and wipe him off the field as quickly as I possibly can. And you can see that the Dunedain Rangers are opening fire, but the Nurad footmen are better than most infantry units at absorbing that. They've got shields, they've got decent armour, and you can see that already my Wind Riders going wide, and my Cataphracts here in their big long line. I've also got my Nurad, or is it Nerniag Horse Archers, which are going to be able to fire into the very densely packed Arnorian formation and do a lot of damage there. You can see that already the frame rate's struggling a little bit to deal with all the cav action. My Veriag Cataphracts taking the charge of the Arnorian Knights head on, and the Arnorian Knights don't stand a chance in this sort of engagement. We can see that my Nerniag Cataphracts are just going to charge head on. He didn't move his pikes forward, instead he moved his men-at-arms forward, so they're going to take just as much damage. And as you can see over here, I did pin his Knights of Innuminus in with my Wind Riders, who were going to lose pretty handily, but then I got my Brotherhood of the Lance in to get a charge off, and they'll do a decent job over there. And as you can see, I've got my other Wind Riders around the back, and already things are starting to fall apart for the Arnor player here. And you can see that immediately. I do hope that I have seen this guy before, but not too often. I do hope that I haven't put him off the online play with this, but this is the sort of thing you can do in the current patch, and it's not fun for the person who's on the receiving end of it. Like, it's quite funny, obviously, for me to just sort of charge down an enemy army that's in a pretty poor position and pretty poorly built to deal with a mass cav charge, but ultimately it's not fun, and that's the point of the game, surely, to be fun, you know. But again, he possibly shouldn't have given up that quickly, because he did have a lot of pikes, and he would have been able to blunt my cav force pretty significantly had he stuck around a little bit longer. Nonetheless, that is it. So within the first 2,000 frames, the Arnorians are already running for the hills, and this leaves his ally, Master Blaster and Gondor, in a horrible position, because it basically means that myself and Creed are going to be able to collapse upon him with our cavalry and just sort of pick him apart, because Gondor traditionally is not very good at dealing with cavalry. You can see that Creed's mounted battle-ready Dunedain already charging into these Athelian Rangers, managing to use their speed to avoid the spears. Or is that infantry? No, it was winged swordsmen. Nailing it. But yeah, these Athelian Rangers taking a nasty charge, and you can see that already the Gondorians are trying to sort of form up a defence as my Cataphracts sort of move into position. At the moment, it's only Creed's cavalry that's sort of doing the damage over here. Although the Gondor cavalry did try to engage my Brotherhood of the Lance, my Wind Riders at this point have been all but expended by, you know, taking arrows from Dunedain Rangers and trying to fight the Knights of Innuminus. And you can see that Master Blaster very wisely is beginning to try and focus down my Brotherhood of the Lance. They don't have shields, they're pretty bad against skirmishers despite their hit points. But as you can see, it's going pretty badly for Gondor. He's just being cycle charged as he tries to sort of form his army up, while Arnor is routing through him. It was really quite a sight to behold. Nonetheless, let's head over to the other side of the battle where things are starting to get going. We have the Misty Mountains charging in with their wargs, and this is bad for Rohan, because the Shield Maidens are going to get caught, and the Shield Maidens are quite a fragile unit. They're not going to stand up too well to a warg charge, and, you know, sending up the Shield Maidens on their own was a bit of a gung-ho move, which hasn't really paid off. Rohan need their cavalry, and again, the Bolg's champions are going to be a real menace for a lot of these units, and these Helmingas are also being charged. So yeah, sending forward the skirmishers without any sort of support, big mistake, especially the Rohan skirmishers, which don't tend to do quite as well. He does have some Rohan bodyguards coming in now, but they didn't really get a very good charge off. They charged into the back of their own men, so a few things going wrong here for the Rohan advance. They've staggered their advance, and they've led the way with units that were really poorly equipped to deal with a cav charge. Meanwhile, if we look back over here, we can see the Galathrin Mounted Company has taken some pretty hefty losses. The Mounted Shield Maidens have done some decent work with their throwing axes, and of course the Dalian front line in position with their pikes. Some action happened back here by the looks of things. Looks like the Galathrin tried to worm their way in, but they were ultimately thrown off by Dale, and Dale have got a very solid base to their army. And the Dalian marksmen, they'll do okay, but they will still lose to the Lothlorien skirmish line. So the onus really here is on Rohan and Dale to use their cavalry to really pressure any sort of advance that the Misty Mountains is trying, because Lothlorien will sit back and allow the Misty Mountains to be the aggressive one from the start. If we go back over to the other side of the battle, we can see that essentially the Gondorians have been surrounded. My Nurad footmen have come forward, along with Creed's Foreshell heavy swords, and also the Foreshell captains. We've basically got a full encircle off on them, with cavalry round the back, infantry round the front. This is really hammer and anvil in its most pure form. You know, it is a bit of a shame for the Gondorian player in particular, because the Gondorian build was an interesting one. He had basically the disparity of having quite a lot of elite units like the Wardens of Minas Ithil, the Wardens of the White Tower, and all of that really high tier Gondor stuff, with a lot of trash. And I'd be interested to see how that would work a lot of the time, but ultimately, because his ally capitulated immediately, he's not going to be able to get the chance to do that. My Nurad footmen, in general, are a very good tool for dealing with the armoured forces on the front line of Gondor. Their war clubs are AP. And even my lowest tier units, my Candish Marauders, are going to come in pretty handy as I try and get into these Gondorian infantrymen. You can see that what's left of my Brotherhood of the Lance, you know, the Gondorian skirmishers have been really focusing these guys down, and they have taken a lot of damage, but they are now... My horse archers are also out of ammo, so these two units, which are both depleted, are going to just sort of attack the Gondorian army from the rear. And hopefully we can rout the Gondorians pretty quickly, because at this point, when you're winning so heavily in a sort of multiple team free-for-all, the other teams will probably work to gang up on you. So we do need to be a little bit careful, a little bit conservative, because at this point we've been aggressive and we've been rewarded for it, but we now need to make sure that we have enough men left to survive whatever onslaught the other two teams will deliver upon us. And you can see my Cataphracts still in pretty decent health. Some of them have taken a few losses, but ultimately the arrows that Gondor have available to them are not going to do much damage to really heavily armoured cav like that. More Candish Marauders coming in, sort of pouring salt into the wound, as it were. And over here you can see the more Nurad footman getting into these Athelian Rangers. I wonder where the Wardens of Minas Ithil went. I think maybe they were completely destroyed actually earlier on. You can see that it's not fun times for Gondor, and indeed this is going to be the end, really. The final charge of all of my Cataphracts really getting into them. And there are the Wardens of Minas Ithil, really getting scythed into there by the Cataphracts. And there are shielded Fountain Guard in here, so I do want to be a little bit careful, but ultimately the Cataphracts using their mass to burrow in. Now though, let's go back over to the other side. Through the rain we can see that the Helmingas are in firing range, and with the amount of archers they have, Dale and Rohan could certainly pressure Lothlorien and the Misty Mountains, mainly because Misty Mountains doesn't have a lot of long-range skirmishers. Now this here is interesting. Dale is moving forward onto the Lothlorien lines. Unfortunately though, he's not leading the way with the kind of units he needs to. He's leading the way with only his Lake Town units, and the Lake Town units will get torn asunder by the Lothlorien archers and infantry. What they really needed up here was the Earls and the Swordmasters. If you're going to go in like this against the Elves, you need to commit with everything and try and crush them in one go, because if you don't, you're in real trouble. And at this point I would say that the Dale advance is going to go very poorly. It will probably break, and as you can see over here, some Galathrin Mounted Company managing to get around, and they're going to charge into these Dalian marksmen, giving the skirmish advantage even more to Lothlorien on this little front. The Earls are going to be able to engage them in melee a little bit, but the Lothlorien cavalry is very slippery. It's going to be able to get loose. And if we look over here, we can see, how's Rohan doing? Dale still has their cavalry, well, their 8th Wodia over with Rohan. Rohan bodyguards over their Helm Hammers. It looks like Rohan are actually going to pull back, which, you know, this not really the best idea, because Dale have committed forward too many units already, and if they fall back, all of these Lake Town units and these Earls are going to get just destroyed. So yeah, kind of a few mistakes here, I would say. You know, particularly with these Blackback Berserkers on the way. The Blackback Berserkers will
good tidings. The enemy general lies dead.
Carve through Dalian Earls. But the Dale Earls really don't stand any sort of chance in this fight. You can see that they're already just falling, and the Blackback Berserkers holding their ground. The prideful orcs that they are. They gotta be orcs, they can't be goblins. They're way too powerful to be goblins. You can see that these Earls trying to get in and around. But unfortunately for him, these Earls going to get charged. Actually no, those are the Shield Maidens. But unfortunately for him, these Sylvan Axemen will do a very good job against the Earls as well, because of their armour piercing. And that's something that the Earls very much reliant on. And if we look back over here, we can see that Gondor is dead. My men are celebrating, Creed's men are celebrating. So we're just going to form up and get ready to advance onto the position that's over here. We can see that the Misty Mountains do have pikes and crossbows, so they're going to be more well suited to dealing with a cav force than the forces we just faced. And you can see that the Rohan nobles charging in now to these Warg Riders, getting a charge. It was a bit of a weak charge. The Rohan bodyguards are here as well. The bodyguards going to be less good at dealing with a sustained melee with these wargs. Where are the Bolg's champions, I wonder? Are they all dead, perhaps? That would be a big scalp. See these Aethwodia trying to charge in. The Aethwodia, interestingly enough, tried to charge into the crossbows very near the pikes. Oh no, there are the Bolgs champions. The Dale Swordmaster's coming up, but it might already be too late. I mean, to give the Dalian line credit, the Lake Town pikemen have managed to get into formation and get their pikes down, which does mean the Sylvan Spearmen will start to struggle pretty roundly. But the real problem they have is where the pikemen are not, and you can see over here, look, getting the surround off on these dismounted earls, they're just going to get bled to death by the Sylvan Axemen and Spearmen together. So yeah, the Dalian infantry in advance was a little too staggered for my liking. If you're up against the elves and if you want to be aggressive, you need to go all in and try and crush them quickly, because otherwise you're going to be in for a rough time. 1-to-1 elven units will usually beat the equivalent from any other faction. These Rohan nobles, they're going to stomp out these Bolgs champions with the help of the Aethwodia horse guards. So the wargs are starting to fall apart. I think the Misty Mountain still has one pretty healthy unit of wargs running around somewhere. Well, here they are. They were healthy until they charged into the Swordmasters and getting focused down by the Helmingars. There's also these Galathran mounted company trying to effect some kind of damage onto these Swordmasters. You see that no one has actually run for the settlement just yet, which is interesting. Now, at this point I was surprised actually that the Misty Mountains didn't go into the settlement, because they were the ones with the route in. No one could really stop them. And they've also got some decent units. They've got pikes and crossbows, which would be good for holding the line in there, but ultimately helping his ally crush Dale's, rather messy advance was probably the way to go. You can see that these Dalian Earls managing to get a good charge off onto these Sylvan Spearmen. They do need to be very careful, however, because if they stick around in melee too long, those veteran warriors will really start to put hurting down on them with their elven curved blades. And you can see here that, the Lake Town front line, where no elite units were, it's starting to fall apart and break. And we actually have some Aethwodia horse guards back here, I assume dealing with Galathran, and they are celebrating, so yes, they must have been. But the Dalian archer force has been largely dealt with by the much more skillful elven archer force. Although, to be honest, the light elven archers and the cinder archers and the Sylvan heavies do still have ammunition. They have taken some losses themselves, to be fair. Dale don't go down without a fight. But the Galathran, it does look like they've pulled their swords out. I think they still have ammunition though. I think they're just being used as an infantry unit to sort of break the Dale lines, because I don't think they would have been firing based on their starting position on this battle. We also have these Blackback Berserkers tearing into these Dale Swordmasters. Very unfortunate for them. We also have these pikes. The arrow rain is still coming down on both sides. The Heavy Goblin Crossbowmen taking the majority of the fire from Rohan's Helmingars, which is a very good target. And these Dale Swordmasters and the Dalian Earls, they're trying to run, trying to retreat, because I do believe at this point the other two teams came to the conclusion that myself and Creed needed to be the ones to die next, so they would join their forces together. So Dale, and you can see the line basically separating where it once was. The Lake Town pikeman refusing to retreat, however. And these guys, they're pretty good cheap pikes, to be honest with you, but you need to support them. You can't send Lake Town units forward on their own, the infantry and the pikes, like the Dale player did here, because they'll just get torn apart, especially by elven units. Even Sylvan Spearmen with their higher skill are going to do a very good job there. So you can see the Lothlorien starting to form up. And over here, we can see that Rohan still have their elite core of infantry, and most of their standard infantry actually still alive, so myself and Creed will have to deal with stuff like Yawling Swordsmen and Marshals of the Red, presumably, and also he does still have a cavalry force remaining. He has Rohan Nobles, and he has some Aethwodia Horse Guards, and some Earls. So their cav force isn't going to go down too easy, but we're still going to have the cav advantage, and if you have the cav advantage over Rohan, you're sitting in a pretty good place. But obviously the problem is we can't just go gung-ho into one of the teams, because then the other one will just surround us, and that would make us not the winners, just the kingmakers. We shall see. And again, I forgot to set it to scored resolution here, but when a player leaves that early, it does slightly corrupt the result, so maybe it's best that it wasn't scored resolution this one time. And again, the Misty Mountains forming up into position, so I think I will make a little cut here. This isn't the big cut, but this is going to be a little one just as we get back into the action. So here we go. You can see that I'm sending forth my cataphracts towards the elven position, at least to try and get them to stop their archers from firing down on our position, because again, elven archers, there's really no stopping them most of the time. You can see here that I do want to be careful of the Blackback Berserkers, because they will do a lot of damage to my heavily armoured cataphract. Getting a decent charge onto those Sylvan Spearmen there. I'll quickly want to pull out of there though. Trying to deal with what's left of the wargs, but also the problem my Variag Cataphracts just get caught up on those wargs and they're going to get ripped apart by Blackback Berserkers in melee. So bit of a mistake there by me with one of my units of Cataphracts. So I need to get them out of there pretty quickly, pretty sharpish. You can see here that my allies Dunedain coming in to back me up. I'm trying to get into the Elven Archers because
changes in the course of battle, for defeat seems almost certain.
Indeed. If we're being focused down by both factions, there's nothing to stop the Elven Archers from just killing all of our most important units, and we would not be able to do a thing about it. You can see there that the Mounted Battle Ready Dunedain going into the sides of this Rohan position. There's also my allies sort of focusing a little bit more on them, whereas me, I can absorb a little bit more fire than the Eriador cavalry, so I'm trying to sort of go in there. And you can see that I actually used the street there to escape with my Variag Cataphracts with the wargs chasing them. I could actually finish those wargs off without the support of the Blackback Berserkers now. But yes, you can see that they've definitely formed up a pretty decent position around here with the Misty Mountains and with the Lothlorien. They've managed to get these hills in their favour.
For defeat seems almost certain.
The announcer's going to be absolutely unbearable saying that over and over again, I'm sure. You see these heavy goblin crossbows in the background doing their thing, trying to shoot down probably some of my cavalry to be fair. You see these Nerniag Cataphracts following the Dunedain bodyguards in to charge. Getting a decent charge off on these Yorling swordsmen could really cut down on that Rohan infantry very nicely. See a nice charge there, even a depleted unit getting a lot of damage then. I'm trying to get away, but you know, Cataphracts are not really hit and run cav. So that's the one weakness of the picks I built. I think that the Dalian player had to leave fairly soon, so he was going to be the one to sort of charge forward into our lines and take the losses, and then Rohan would be left to pick up the pieces. Some Mounted Battle Ready to but of course this is where the Forest Shell Gatekeepers and the Variag Bowmen will come into their own. These pikemen are just going to get absolutely shredded on the approach, and there are also those Dalian Swordmasters. There is actually a very meaty cavalry engagement going on up here between the Earls and some of my Cataphracts. However, the presence of the Nurad Windblades essentially means that the cab fight is always going to go in my favour. They're the best cab-to-cab unit in the game at the moment, I think, based on how fast they are. They are a little bit more weak to like the anti-infantry side of things than the Kalanardon Knights, but cab-to-cab, they're pretty supreme. You can see that things are looking good for Lothlorien in the Misty Mountains. They have sort of taken a back seat in proceedings, as it were, as we get into the sort of the assault between ourselves and Dale and Rohan. So these Variag Cataphracts, I'm going to try and charge into what remains of the Dalian Archers. Again, the Variag Cataphracts taking a bit of a beating from those Blackback Berserkers, so they're not quite as not quite as fine a health as they should be, perhaps. And here we can see the charge. Going to do a lot of damage to a very depleted unit like that. Again, scything them down. These Royal Guardsmen are still alive, and they still have ammunition. With their armor-piercing arrows, they could really be a pain in the neck. And then over here you can see my Nurad Windblades are so fast as well, and my Cataphract's doing a good job. But over here you can see that in the Dalian player's haste to sort of advance forward, he has allowed his sort of few pockets of resistance to be surrounded entirely by Nurad Footman. And even with pikes, the Nurad Footman are a pretty good pike breaker. They're not quite as good as Blackwatch Legion or most Dwarven units, but they will still do a good job. And now you can see the Lake Town unit starting to rout. This is going to be the end of most of Dale's infantry force. You can see that the Hobbits trying to draw some of the Lothlorien fire. My Nurad Footmen still doing pretty well for themselves. Forest Shell Heavy Swords, some Lumbermen still alive. But ultimately, if this continues and we're having to fight all four of the opposing armies, or what's left of them, there's no way we'd be able to win. The pressure would just be too much. You can see I'm charging into the Royal Guard here with my Variag Cataphracts. There goes King Bran.
Without him, his troops will lose their will to fight.
See, the Cataphracts also pull out axes in melee, so they are very strong melee cab as well. They have lances though. These Dalian marksmen still trying to do something. See that the Lumbermen of Eriador, and actually those Hobbit archers, unfortunately, instead of drawing the ire of the Lothlorien skirmish forces, they instead drew the ire of what remains of Cluvis's Warg Riders, and I really should have turned around and finished them off with my Variag Cataphracts, but in the end I didn't want to lose any more of them. But this has led to us losing a ton of Hobbits, scything down through that line. See, Rohan is just sort of menacingly on the horizon there with his elites still intact. My Cataphracts doing a decent job against these Dalian marksmen, but they've lost their hit points at this point, so they do need to be careful against the AP that those Dalian marksmen have. And at this point, we kind of figured, well, we could probably beat Rohan, but there's no way we're going to be able to crack that position after we beat Rohan. So we're going to charge forward and try and take on the elves in the Misty Mountains, and this does mean that Rohan is left as sort of the wild card of this match, and he could be the Kingmaker. He could turn on his newfound allies and kill the elves, or he could continue to fight us, and whichever one he picks is essentially the opposite will win. Because we don't have, even with the hidden squad, which still hasn't been committed, we would need to do a lot of damage, because they would just need to be the final nail in whatever's left's coffin, as opposed to taking on tons and tons of units, because Black Wolds and Thieves of Tharbad are not going to be a particularly long-living unit. They're very much about doing their damage very quickly. You can see that my Nurad footmen have taken a few losses over the course of the battle, but they are still going to have to lead the way against the pretty scary forces of Lothlorien in the Misty Mountains. So if we go over and have a look at what they have left, we have a look at what infantry units they have. The Sindar heavy archers are decent, but the Sindar archers with their hit points, the pikes are going to be pretty difficult to break through, with my Nurad footmen being the only ones that can really do it, and they're kind of depleted. The Sylvan Axemen will be kind of an issue, but you know, we're not overly reliant on our armour. The real problem is going to be the Blackbacks, wherever they're at, and the Galathran veterans and the Blackwatch Legion. Those units there, and the Orc bodyguards, I guess. Simply because of how robust they are, we're not going to be able to break them down quickly enough. My infantry force, you know, this is the price for me bringing a lot of cavalry, is my infantry force doesn't have a lot of staying power, and it's going to have to go up against elven elite units. So we'll see how it does, because here we go with the advance, and we see that immediately Rohan is coming forward. Or is he? No, he sort of backs off. I think he's going to try and wait for us to move in fully and then try and crush us, but this does mean, of course, that he will be delivering the game more or less to Lothlorien and the Misty Mountains if he attacks us from the rear. See that my Nurad Windblades moving around the flank very quick. You know, I was trying to sort of get them around, but again, it's very difficult to crack a new, well, not a new box, but tactical geometry, I guess I'll call it, in this case, even though it is a new box really, because you're blocking every avenue with pikes and shielded units. Unfortunately, this means they're just going to be focused down by Elven Archers, and you can see that the Elven Archers are targeting them, rightly so, because it is their main weakness, the Nurad Windblades, just like the Brotherhood of the Lance. Very potent, but quite fragile despite their hit points. And you can see that I have led the way with my Archers. The Variag Bowmen are not bad in melee, but the Nurad Footmen are what I'm really relying on to do some damage here. You can see the Blackback Berserkers are here. There's only 12 of them though, so I will kill these guys at the very least. But there is another unit, I believe, ready to pounce. And actually these Variag Bowmen really overextended themselves, because they're now into the Blackwatch Legion, which is going to be very bad. And I did try, like, the most important thing was killing the Elven Archers, so even if it was reckless, I needed to try and get something in there, and unfortunately it cost my Nurad Windblades so dearly with these snow trolls right there. So very bad for me. Again, I'm sending forward my Candish Marauders. Here's the healthy unit of Blackback Berserkers. Definitely not the sort of unit the Candish Marauders want to be fighting. So yeah, things are going to go pretty badly for my infantry. It's going to be down to my ally. Unfortunately, I have the best of allies. So we'll see, the Hobbit Archers are firing, but unfortunately I would not be able to get much reinforcements from my ally, because Rohan has made his choice, and Rohan is attacking Eriador. So this means that my ally is not going to be able to reinforce me, which means my line is going to fall apart. And unfortunately for us, Rohan with that cavalry might be able to kill my allies and entire army as well. Although with the gatekeepers hovering around, maybe not. See, the gatekeepers are back here, but you can see the Candish Marauders, they're shaken. I'm just trying to hold the line here. You know, the Nurad Footmen will hold for a little while, but against this level of elite infantry, it's not going to hold for very long. You can see the Blackwatch Legion, pretty much the better version of the Nurad Footmen. Exactly the same sort of philosophy, only more elite, and you can see that these Sylvan Axemen, they're going to charge into the side of these Variag Bowmen and these Nurad Footmen, and they're going to start to wrap around my lines. I have nothing really to counteract this. At this point my cavalry has been picked apart pretty heftily. You see that I was trying to sort of get in and around the side with the Variag Cataphracts going through the road that I used to escape the previous time, but look at how many men Lothlorien's still got available to him. So Dale's assault really didn't do anything to Lothlorien's infantry, and that's what's really going to cost not only Dale, but me in this fight, because I just don't have enough infantry to deal with this sort of thing. The Candish Marauders, they're wavering. You know, they are low tier. They only cost 150. They're probably one of the better low tier infantry units in my opinion, at least in terms of what damage they can do, provided they're backed up. And that AP certainly helps with their sort of mean-looking clubs and axes that they wield with one hand to look cool. And here we have the Black Watch League. The balance of forces is actually evenly matched. The Nurad Footmen and the Khandish Marauders together can be a bit of a potent combination. But ultimately, with this going on here, being wrapped around by the Sylvan Epson, and wherever the Blackback Berserkers are, the battle's going to go heavily against me. You can see a victory seems certain for them. And indeed, that's not all, because the Misty Mountains also had a hidden force. The best hidden force. It is made up almost entirely of Snaga and Goblin infantry. He's also got a couple of units of Mountain Orc Berserkers, but this is the Misty Mountains' hidden ambush force, and he's going to collapse around.
In the course of battle, for defeat seems almost certain.
Unfortunately, he's also going to go after my ally Eriador. Let's go back over and see what's happening with Eriador, shall we? And see with the addition of these Helm Hammers, these Marshals of the Red getting into these Gatekeepers, so the Gatekeepers won't be able to fire on and kill that cavalry. The Bandit Javelins trying to fire into the sides of the Marshals of the Red. They're actually doing a lot of damage. There's a lot of dead Marshals of the Red there, and the Gatekeepers trying to get away. But unfortunately for us as well, we've got these Galathran veteran warriors cutting through these Hobbit archers, trying to pad their kill counts a bit. Yeah, you can see that my ally simply...
dead, slain by the enemy.
Well, there goes Creed at the hands of a Helm Hammer.
Remains.
Yeah, my ally didn't have the infantry units to deal with this, much like I didn't have the infantry units to deal with the Misty Mountains and Lothlorien, so both of our armies are going to crumble. So despite the fact that we absolutely slaughtered the Arnorian-Gondorian alliance, albeit with one player quitting very early, this is, you know, we weren't able to carry that on. And that is the problem with the cavalry army. It can lack stamina, or legs in a battle, as it were. And unfortunately, you know, the Eriador infantry just doesn't have the solidity to withstand a push like this. And even Rohan has got a more solid infantry. Well, I don't know about that. They're probably pretty similar. The damage done to my ally was probably what did it in the end. I mean, these battle-ready Dunedain fighting the good fight against these shield maidens. Shield maidens, they encourage nearby troops, but that encouragement is going to go to waste. The Forest Shell captains losing to the Helm Hammers with their AP. And then over here on the front lines, the Yawling Swordsman. Oh, excuse me. The balance of forces is evenly matched, but these Forest Shell heavy swords are going to fall apart, and this Rohan cavalry is still pretty healthy. And now these Sindar archers, and at this point Rohan, I think, realises just how healthy the Misty Mountains and Lothlorien still are, and the fact that he needs to use his cavalry. But this charge here was unfortunate because he was able to sandwich them with axemen and spearmen and all sorts. These Helmingaths trying to get in there. You can see that my forces have almost completely fallen apart. I think I've got a few units that have sort of returned to the fight somewhere.
Our men have slain the enemy general.
There goes the Lothlorien general, interestingly enough, in the hands of the Marshals of the Red. I still have my Nurad Windblades, which I'm basically using to just sort of kill the Snaga. And, you know, obviously the Snaga, not really the most important target, but with how few of my Windblades I actually have left, this is the only target I can reasonably go after and do damage. So I'm trying to sort of cut down on the Misty Mountains Lothlorien numbers, and hopefully our Hidden Murder Squad can still do something in the late game, provided Rohan does some damage. Unfortunately, however, you can see that Rohan didn't really have a line sorted out, and now it's turning into a bit of a three-way duel, because we have the Sylvan Axemen, the battle-ready Dunedain, the Helm Hammers, the Forest Shell captains. It's a big mess over here, and you know, these Yawling Swordsmen don't stand a chance against the Sylvan Axemen. The Sylvan Axemen with their armour upgrades looking very snazzy. What's going on back here? The Rohan cavalry trying to get away from the Sylvan Spearmen. See, there's still some Helmingaths with some ammunition left alive. They're going to be shut down by one of the depleted units of Sylvan Spearmen just to prevent them from firing. And again, I honestly believe if Rohan had some Kalanardon Knights from the start of the battle, Lothlorien would be in a bit of trouble here at this point, because they are so tanky, they would still have basically their full unit alive. They'd probably be exhausted, but
for defeat seems almost certain.
Who needs to run away when you're invincible? And here come the Orc bodyguards, another unit with hit points, scurrying over the hill like ants. And they're going to charge in here, tie up the Helm Hammers. Helm Hammers who have already been in battle against an elite unit. Their stamina is going to run out. They're also taking Snaga fire, I believe. Not that that's going to be too impressive, but the Blackback Berserkers will rip through the Helm Hammers. No problem at all. See these Snaga skirmishers trying to get closer to the action with their javelins. What have we got going on over here? Ah yes, this is the units I had which returned to the fight. I essentially have one unit of Variag archers which is already dead, and this very depleted unit of Nurad footmen which I'm just using to engage the Misty Mountains, get a few more kills. blunt their fangs a little bit, hoping that our hidden squad can do their damage, do their work. You can see actually over here I do have New-Eyed Footman breaking, but I also have this unit of Candish Marauders, which came back to the fight, so I'm gonna send them in as well. Send them in to meet the, actually no, the Snaga are routing. Yeah, these Candish Marauders, they are shaken and very tired, so they won't last very long in melee, but just the fact that I'm having troops return is odd. You don't get returning troops in Medieval 2 all that much, to be honest with you. New-Eyed Footman defeats seem sat in there, taking damage from these trolls. My Windblades are still alive, all 4 of them. And actually I do have another unit returning, so I do have yet another unit of Variag Bowmen, which I'm going to use to try and charge in and do some damage to that Snaga. But really this is the epicenter of the fight at this point. You can see that the Blackwatch Legion pushing through, and Rohan has no answer for the Blackwatch Legion, simply too heavy. Marshals of the Red getting torn asunder, and then the Helmhammers. Defeat seems certain for them up against these Orc bodyguards and these Blackback Berserkers. So Rohan made his bed, and now he must lie in it. He chose to destroy us, and now he's being killed by the elves. Of course, he could have hidden in the corner and waited a considerably longer amount of time for both of our armies to be pretty low on health, and that's maybe what he should have done. Here's the Rohan general though, going absolutely crazy, trying to kill this Axeman. Look at him, look. The Rohan general honestly doesn't even look that impressive next to a lot of his troops. Hold on a moment. Well, that screenshot I think was took while lightning bolt was going off, so it looks very bright indeed. We shall see. Regardless, we can see that the Rohan do still have some nobles, but not nearly enough to. He's still going after the gatekeepers as well. That's unbelievable. We could have joined, but he looked down and said, "No, I want to lose." What's going on here? The Blackwatch Legion are apparently fighting, but they're fighting against something that's invisible. They're fighting against their inner demons. But yes, at this point, it's largely just very depleted units fighting into one another, and eventually, of course, this will turn into the Hidden Murder Squad getting their time in the sun. And here we can see the Variag Bowmen just sort of killing these Snaga. I do like the look of the Variag Bowmen. I like sort of the flags, the banners. Of course, they are out of ammunition. Pretty good in melee though. It's very similar to the Nerniag infantry. It's essentially the Nerniag infantry are a little bit better, but they are also 100 more. So I would say the Variag Bowmen are probably the more cost-effective choice as they kill these Snaga, and the Snaga and the Hobbits are all routing from the field as per usual. You can see that here is the Rohan bodyguard. Oh my. Facing off against the Snaga. I'm going to try and get a screenshot of that.
The enemy general abandons his men.
Oh, fucking hell, Steve. Didn't even let his general die to Snaga. What a spoil sport. And here we have everyone basically celebrating. So now it's the time for the very big cut, essentially, because I am sort of charging into individual units of Snaga with my Windblades, but really that's all that's going on. So we shall rejoin the fight when the hidden squad up here gets their time in the sun and gets to make their last stand, because at this point there's too many Misty Mountains troops left, but we'll at least see how well the Black Bolts do against stuff like Blackwatch Legion. So as we can see, I just missed the charge of the trolls because I had it on the wrong speed, but nonetheless the trolls did charge in and they were surprised by the appearance of the Black Bolts, and I believe 2 units of Thieves of Tharbad. The Black Bolts will do a lot of damage to the trolls. The Thieves of Tharbad probably slightly less so, if I'm not mistaken with how the Thieves of Tharbad actually work and what sort of damage they do. But again, these Dunedain Rangers are going to do quite a lot of missile damage on the approach to these Misty Mountains units. I'm also going to try and get some charge damage done to the Snow Trolls with my Nurad Windblades. My general, amusingly, is still alive, and there he is. The purple colour scheme for the Candish general looks kind of weird, to be honest with you. Probably the most ugly looking of all the generals in the game. The Eriador one isn't that great either, to be honest with you, but that's from vanilla. can see that these snow trolls starting to fall by the wayside to this highly damaging infantry. I do like the Black Bolts. I believe they're being moved to Rudour in the next patch, so they definitely fit the emphasis of Rudour, which is doing a lot of damage very quickly at the expense of personal safety, which I'm a big fan of. Can't wait for Rudour. Rudour and Linden both seem like they'd be my cup of tea, definitely. And we have Thieves of Tharbad sort of splitting, allowing the Dunedain Rangers to get a lot of fire into those Blackback Berserkers. Thieves of Tharbad probably won't do too well against the Orc Bodyguards, to be honest, unless they're backed up. But I do still like the Thieves of Tharbad. They're a cool looking unit. I think they will be remaining with Eriador or Cardamon, as they will eventually become known. And I hope that I can't wait for the next patch, because I gotta be brutally honest, where the meta is in the game at the moment, I hate it. I hate the dominance of Cav and archers and how infantry is just sort of a bit part player in most of these things, and I think the game sorely needs the new patch, and I can't wait for it. And I can't wait to get back into doing some of the stats related stuff as well, because I think that's what I'm best at. But regardless, for the time being, we have the Misty Mountains crashing down upon these bandits. And we have my Nurad Windblades just sort of trying to charge in. I was hoping to sort of maybe assassinate the Misty Mountains General, assuming he's still alive. I'm not sure if we'd already killed him or not. No, it was a Lothlorien one, wasn't it? So yes, I was trying to sort of kill the Misty Mountains General, maybe get a chain route if I'm very lucky. You can see that the Dunedain Rangers are sort of just trying to do their thing, but they're also being set upon by these snow trolls, which are still alive, unbelievably. And the snow trolls, of course, will carve their way through Dunedain Rangers and melee very easily. The last stand of the Black Wolds. Here are the Blackback Berserkers as well, taking decent amounts of damage pretty consistently. And now the Mountain Orc Berserkers. Mountain Orc Berserkers won't be too good against Black Wolves, to be honest with you, but at this point, numbers is king. And of course, there is a sort of a part at the end of this battle which isn't terribly relevant, so I'll probably fast forward our way through that. You can see my general sort of really getting in.
Our general lies slain upon
he
the
was.
battlefield.
Unfortunately, my general gave out before the Misty Mountains general did. But still, the Nurad Windblades, they did me proud. There's still one left as well, one hero, trying to get as many kills as he can.
Our army is tiring.
Our army is tiring, indeed. Our army consisting of that one individual. The Black Wolves trying to do their best. The Dunedain Rangers sort of trying to retreat so they can get a better shot off. Creed trying to get more kills. And in this sort of situation, of course, in terms of scored resolution, we have probably won it because we've had to fight every single army and we've done a decent amount of damage to all of them. But in terms of the actual physical battle, the Orcs of the Misty Mountains and Lothlorien are going to have victory here in Anorian. And interestingly enough, no one really used the central settlement other than this one dude who, unbelievably, Gondor is still in this fight, apparently. I'm going to get a screenshot of this guy. Amusing. But yes, he has lasted longer than Rohan and Dale. But then he only has one unit, so in spirit he was crushed pretty quickly, but even so, it's however you want to interpret the battle and how it went. He managed to sneak that one Athelian Ranger. Here we can see what's the one dude I have left in my army is now dead. So my army is now fully destroyed.
Our army's running from the field. We must rally our men before all is lost.
And so it comes down to basically just Creed. He has 39 Black Bolts remaining, trying to do as much damage as they possibly can. They'll do decent against the Orc Bodyguards. As we can see over here, the Dunedain Rangers just sort of trying to lead these Mountain Orc Berserkers a merry dance. The Black Wolves and the Mountain Orc Berserkers look very similar to one another, to be honest with you. Similar intentions, I suppose, behind what they're meant to be used for. Although the Black Wolves are considerably better at it, in my opinion. The Black Wolves are a very cost-efficient unit in the current patch. Only 600 for a unit that can potentially do a ton of damage. Of course, it is quite risky. They are not durable. There goes the taunting of the Mountain Orc Berserkers, doing their chanting. I'm not sure that's going to work on on the Black Wolds, because they're still eager. They're probably into that. Probably encourage them more. Let's go to ×2 speed. The Black Wolds will take a long time dying in sustained melee. In fact, if we look back over here, what is going on here? The Dunedain Rangers doing their best. And they actually did manage to rout some Mountain Orc Berserkers. That does mean they're actually going to be able to get onto the hill and start shooting again. This last part of the battle, it's been obvious who's going to win for all this time, but it's still drawing out quite a long time. So you can see that this hidden sort of squad that Eriador can deploy, it does have some staying power against the right units. I don't like battles when it's raining though. It seems to negatively affect the frame rate, especially when I turn the camera. How many Black Wolves do we still have alive? Just 4? Just 2? Just 1? He's still alive. Still going for it. Look at this guy. He ain't giving up. I think at this point he's actually just going to charge into the Dunedain Rangers. I've run out of things to say at this point in case you haven't noticed. It's very obvious who's going to win. Let's go to ×6 speed actually. What's he shooting at? Oh, I see, he's shooting at the Uruk pikes as they arrive. So yeah, Misty Mountain still has their Blackwatch Legion and everything, so they still had a ton of good units left. I'm not sure what Dale was doing, or what Rohan was doing with their assault even. No damage done at all. Shameful display. And there go the Dunedain Rangers. Obviously don't stand a chance against Orc bodyguards in melee. Where is that Black Wold? At this point it's really just a case of 2 lone individuals. Where is he? Oh, he's hiding, of course. I found him, unbelievably. So that's where he is. Well, we don't need to see the Black Wold. Let's go back over to here, shall we? And witness one man upon his hill. So in terms of a King of the Hill type fight, this guy has entered into the spirit of things rather accordingly. As we sort of fast forward our way through the final 2,000 frames, he's firing at whoever's closest. Oh, he's leaving his hill. He is charging forth. What a madman. You can see that the doors don't open, but they are just sort of a... similar to some of the houses in the game where you can just sort of walk through them. They're kind of... they don't really exist, they're just graphics that are there. There's one Sylvan Spearman here. He's about to get shot point blank. Oh dear, here he goes. And destroyed. Oh, so interestingly, I think the Black Wold is the last one left alive. I thought during the game it was actually the Athelian Ranger, but no, it's actually one of the Black Wolds. Although I think we actually admit defeat, rather than send the Black Wold in. So there we go, replay finished. And unfortunately I think this means we can't see the kills. I think someone actually did crash out right at the end there. Fortunately though, the battle was already over. But yes, in terms of kills, myself and Creed obviously got an enormous amount of kills. I got, I think, 2,600 and Creed got like 1,700, which was more than any individual got from the other teams. But again, the physical battle was lost. So it really depends on how you want to judge it based on how that guy left very early on in the battle and how that skewed things. I personally still think, based on the fact we had to fight 2 enemies rather than just 1, even if we hadn't fought Arnor or Gondor at all, we still would have won on kills. So... but that's just me. It's up to you, of course. But yeah, that was a nice free-for-all, and I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.